At this time, I would like to invite Jessie Scott to the stage as she will guide the discussion on sustainability with two of our very special guests. Jessie is the editor-in-chief at Successful Farming and is based in Des Moines, Iowa. She oversees all the editorial for Successful Farming across print, digital, video, and audio, and covers breaking news for agriculture.com.
I'd like to start by introducing our two panelists. We have Charlie here to my right. Charlie Bescher and his wife Donna own a cow-calf operation in the foothills of the Ozarks, where they primarily raise registered Herefords. Charlie serves as a board member of the U.S. Roundtable of Sustainable Beef and is co-chair of the Goals Working Group. He also serves as the Region 3 Vice President for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, along with the Vice President of the Missouri Cattlemen's Association. He's a busy guy. We also have Robert Petter, who you heard from earlier this morning. Robert and his wife Karen live in Stuttgart, Arkansas. Robert farms with his brother David, growing soybeans and rice. For the last 20 years, Robert has been actively involved with the USA Rice Federation. Now he's contributing his time and talents to the soybean industry. Robert is a fourth-year director with the United Soybean Board, as you heard earlier, and he sits on the Value Alignment Committee and is the Health and Nutrition Supply Chair. And before we get into today's discussion, I do have a little bit of a confession as the moderator on the sustainability session. I kind of hate the word sustainability. And to be clear, just the word. As a journalist, I think words are really important. Word choice is important. And I feel like sustainability has become a buzzword that has been used in so many ways to mean many different things that in some ways it's become somewhat meaningless. And I also feel like it's a word that's been used to say that this is a good sustainable farmer over here because they are doing things this way, and this farmer isn't because they're choosing to do things a different way. And I'm a firm believer that it is our job as ag media to not tell farmers how to farm, but to give them the information they need on practices, products, technology, machinery, you name it, so that they can make the best decision for their farm, their business, and their family. And I was happy to hear that today's panelists felt, I'll say somewhat similarly. If you guys like this word sustainability, I won't judge you for that. But in the prep call we had for today's session, we talked about how sustainability means different things in different locations on different farms. The type of conservation irrigation that Robert does on his farm, which I know he's going to talk about, is not going to work for every farmer. But that conversation might spark some ideas about how to use technology to be more efficient with your water use. So that is really my goal of today's session, is to have Robert and Charlie share some of the specific conservation practices that they use, what has and what hasn't worked at the farm level, and then go into a broader conversation on sustainability at the national and international level, including the work that they do with their national organizations and the consumer's perspective on farm sustainability. So that's my goal for the session, and also that is the most you will hear from me for the rest of this. But I would like to start to both of you. What does sustainability mean to you?
Thank you for that question. Sustainability to me, when I look at that and see that buzzword, as you called it, to me it's resiliency. Is my operation going to be here for the next generation, my grandkids, their kids? That to me is my goal in my sustainability program that we've got on our operation, is to have that there for our generations to come. We got the wildlife that we need. We're incorporating natives on our operation that's bringing in a lot more wildlife. Our water quality, we're increasing our water quality every year over year by keeping cattle out of our streams. We keep putting buffer zones up. So on a beef operation, to me, it's a lot different than it is on a row crop operation, because we've got animals out there grazing, and we've got to control their impact that they're doing to the soil and the waterways and stuff like that. To me, though, the resiliency part is what drives home with me. I would rather replace the sustainability word with resiliency.
And to your point, and we talked about this a little bit earlier too, sustainability doesn't just mean in terms of what you're doing and the practices and the conservation, but also having a farm that's sustainable that you can pass down to the next generation, and the next generation wants to be involved in it because it's financially sustainable too.
Absolutely, yes.
How about you, Robert?
Well, good morning again. Thank you for allowing us to be here. I thought she was going to say not to use the word sustainability, and I was just going to have to get up and leave the stage. So, for me personally, sustainability is what we as farmers have been doing almost forever. Long before there was the word sustainability, long before there was a sustainability officer in a company, it's our land, it's personal, it's where we were raised, it's where we raise our family, it's how we make our living, and to protect the soil and the crops and the animals and the water and the air that's all around us. That's the most important thing that I can think of, and we do it just because that's where we are. Now, you add the factor that around the world, sustainability is the buzzword. It's what everybody wants to hear. And as a producer, we need to give our consumers and our purchasers what they're looking for. And I think we're often doing a great job at that. Again, as I said earlier today, we need your help in telling that story. And the more we can, I think the better off we'll be.
Let's dive into some of the specifics on the conservation practices that you implement on your farm. And Robert, I know you said earlier you love talking about sustainable practices, in particular your irrigation. So let's start there.
Okay, so irrigation is a big role in our farm. Most everybody has heard about no-till and minimal till and buffer zones and different tillage practices, but they don't think about the next step. So I guess in the early 80s, we had an extreme drought here in Arkansas, and most of the farmers jokingly made a comment. I sure wish I had some of that water that we had back in the spring when it was too wet. And so it took us a few years, but we realized that if we can take some of our least productive ground and create on-farm water storage facilities, that we would have good, clean, pure, reoccurring natural rainwater. And that's what we've been doing on our farm, I guess, since the late 80s, maybe early 90s. But we had to build up financially to build these facilities and figure out the best way to manage them and how it would pay off in the end, those kind of things. And it seems to be very popular in our area. So starting in November each year, we're collecting the pure natural snow melt and any kind of rain runoff, and that's what they're using at home today, irrigating crops on the farm, is that just good old clean rainwater that fell in November. That's what we're using today to irrigate our crops, and it just really comes full circle when you're reusing and utilizing something that's natural. I'm not pumping out of the ground. I'm not taking water out of rivers, creeks, and streams, which means we're not endangering habitat in those rivers, creeks, and streams. And I think there's just a lot of positive things that come from that. And when I try to talk more in depth on that internationally, people just really, really love that story, because we, as in the U.S., are trying so hard to be sustainable and to differentiate our U.S. soy product, and I'll say from other commodities as well, because we need to hear from everybody, from all commodities that are doing the same thing, and we can tell our story, and other people's are looking for that every day from us. Sorry, that was a little long.
Well, that's good. I've got a couple follow-ups for you before we get back over to Charlie. You talked about being able to make that financial investment early on. How has that paid out over time in terms of the yields that you're seeing?
Fabulous. So now it's not all attributed to the irrigation aspect, but we've doubled our yields from probably in the 80s. We had a 30 bushel per acre average, and now we probably as a state are pushing closer to 60. So a lot of it is from the different research that our checkoff dollars have gone to. We're creating shorter seasons, less inputs, and less inputs typically mean a greater financial ability at the end of the year to show a bit of a profit. And so it's really done a spectacular job in using something, again, that's just naturally reoccurring and not having to spend lots of resources and energy costs to pump and divert water. It was what was there on the farm. So,
Yeah, that answered it, yeah. And tell us about some of the technology you're using, the moisture sensors, the weather stations, that help enable you to be more efficient with your irrigation.
Yeah, I didn't bring my phone up here, but you've all heard the saying, I've got an app for that. Well, I have an app for that. So I'm sitting here 4 hours away from home, or I could be in China or Japan or wherever, and I need to irrigate. I can go to the app on my phone, and I can turn on the pumps back home and take that water and put it on the crops. I also have what I call basically a weather station that sends me an email when we get rain at home. And so again, I can be here or anywhere and get this email that says we got a beautiful rain. If I'm irrigating, I can probably turn that off. And so I go to my app and tap my little icon, and I've done that. It took me shorter time than it took me to tell you that story. We have in-ground moisture sensors now that are dictating how much availability there is of moisture 18 inches in the ground, which is where the roots are, which is where the moisture needs to be. I can see what's happening on top of the soil, but I really can't see what's happening down there. So when I get this cute little email that says, hey, it's getting dry down here, I need to turn on some water, that's what I do. And so we're much more timely on our irrigation. We're not just throwing a dart and thinking, well, it's about time. It's more precise. And the more precision you can have, usually the better crop you're going to have and feed the crops when they need it.
Thanks, Robert. And Charlie, let's switch gears a little bit. Why don't you tell us about some of the work you've been doing with native grasses in your pastures?
Yeah, we looked, my wife and I both looked at the growth curve of our fescue grass. Here in the Midwest, we're blessed or cursed to have fescue. We got the endophyte that comes along with it, but if you look at the growth curve of the fescue in the summer months, it's pretty much dormant. It's not doing much. And to make us more sustainable, we had to come up with something where we could stockpile our fescues for the winter time to cut down on our stored forages. So we started looking at other forages, and everything led to native warm season grass for us. We started in 2018 planning for this, and we did our first seeding in 2019. And we went into it very slow because you got to take the land out of operation for one complete year. So we done 20 acres our first year in 2019. We was grazing it by the next May in 2020. And just with the little amount that we had got established on our property, we could take those animals off of the fescue in May. They would be on the native warm season grass all summer long. That allowed us to rest all of our fescue grasses and store those forages for the winter, which in return cut down a lot on our hay consumption. So we'll pull off of our natives around August, September, depending on the weather patterns, how the moisture's been and the temperatures. But then that allows us to spend all the way up till January, February in a lot of years and not feed these stored forages, which has definitely made our bottom line look a lot better. And native grasses they're not really intense. They do not require a lot of introduced fertilizers. So we have not put any commercial fertilizer on our operation in 2015. With our tight margins, sometimes that's can mean whether we're going to make a profit or not. So that has really made us more sustainable on our operation.
It takes quite a bit of intense management, though. You said you're out moving your cows every day, right?
Yep. Starting back in 2011, we looked at our operation. It was subdivided, but it was not broken down to me that I thought that made us more productive. We was able to increase our numbers by going in and subdividing all of our pastures into 10-acre fields. Then we subdivide that down into 2.5-acre paddocks with temporary fencing using polywire. These cattle are moved every single day. We're giving all of the ground at least a 30-day rest before the cattle ever come back to that particular paddock. And we've seen the leaf matter increase, which relates to we're sequestering a lot more carbon. We're putting more back in the soil than we're pulling away from it. In 2019, when we started this process of putting in the native grasses, I sprayed and killed our best fescue field we had on the property, and my neighbors thought I had went crazy. I mean, and I done it right by the highway. You could see it all. I mean, it was bare dirt till about the middle of July of 2019. Then the seedlings started growing, but they had really thought that I had went crazy.
Do they still think you're crazy?
Absolutely not. We host a field day every year on our farm in the fall. And it usually consists of about 45 to 50 producers come to look at the native grasses. It usually starts like at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and we have to shut the barn lights off to get them to leave that afternoon.
It paid off.
I had something to that.
Go for it, yeah.
You're asking about sustainability on our farms, and you touched on this, Charlie, a little bit. I said this last night to someone, but it's got to be a win-win-win situation for sustainability. It's got to work for the environment, obviously. It's got to answer the questions that the consumer wants. We've got to provide what they need. But also that sustainable practice has to be something that we can incorporate. We're probably very happy with it and would be interested in hearing about new sustainable practices that somebody may have. But it's got to be able to fit into the operation, and I'm saying economically. I just can't do everything, and just because somebody is very passionate about a particular type of sustainable practice doesn't mean that it's affordable for us to incorporate it. So it's really got to be a win-win-win situation, and a lot of times we kind of get left out of that equation, and we just need to make sure that it's something that we can all do. So, I just wanted to add that.
That's good.
Yep, I think you guys have both made that point of either the financial upfront cost, but the return you're getting, or your ability to reduce your inputs and your overall costs too. And Charlie, I know you're also using some technology, so let's talk about the Enriched Ag pilot program that you've been doing.
Yeah, we have been involved with a company. They started out at Bridge. Their name was Bridge AI, and they've now become Enriched Ag. It's a forage prediction tool. When the pilot program first started, it was using a lot of satellite imagery and some stationary game cameras out in the field to measure our forage height. And now it's elevated to where we've got a camera that goes on the front of our UTV. And when we go out checking and moving the cows daily, we stick this camera on our hood of our UTV. In the app world, I've got an app on my phone that I can control this camera. Well, it's sending data to this dashboard, and I can go on my iPad and I can look at the fields, and I can look at history on my forage production. and it kind of gives me a management tool if I'm staying in that pasture maybe a little too long, because in the spring our fescues really are growing fast, and it's hard to keep them at a vegetative state to keep the seed head suppressed. So we use the enriched ag platform to kind of keep the grass more at a vegetative state, but we can also, sometimes I can't see with the naked eye just by driving through the fields. I can see spots that they are determining that's being overgrazed. Well, with my temporary fences, I may fence that area out where the cattle, where that gets a 60 or 90-day rest. So that's allowed us to better manage our forages. We can look at the history data back when this first started, when we first started using the dashboard. We could tell where we had unrolled hay in the winter that spring by looking at the maps provided on the dashboard, because those areas was more fertile. The production was higher on the forages, and that was ground that we was able to use a little bit longer into the winter because of the fertility and the organic matter that we brought up in the soil.
And you guys have both shared practices that you've implemented that have worked. Are there things that you have tried on your farm that haven't worked or that it didn't make sense to continue doing?
Something that has, I'm sorry, I
That
can't.
hasn't worked, yes.
I have one.
That you're willing to share as well.
Yeah. So the Soil and Water Conservation District in Missouri, they cost share on nutrient management barns. It's for winter feeding your cows, your hay in these barns. The state is dumping lots of money into these barns. You got to get a nutrient management plan to qualify for one, but you're feeding all the hay in there on a concrete floor. All that hay and all that manure has to be hauled out. It takes a manure spreader. It takes tractors to load it, tractors to spread it. When I can take that and I can take that animal out in the field and unroll my hay, and that cow can spread that manure, I'm not having to do it. But we have 2 of those nutrient management barns, and neither one of them have been used for the last 3 years.
Okay, a lot of people have heard about the sustainable practice of cover crops. It's a fabulous sustainable tool, but here in the South, we're a little further south than here, we grow a lot of rice. And the rotation of rice, soybeans, corn doesn't really yield well for cover crops behind rice. We would like to see the residue left from the rice stubble to be classified as a cover crop. Because it's the straw of the rice holds the moisture. You can't plant it in the winter because it's wet. It takes a lot longer in the spring for it to dry out in order to plant the cover crops. So that's probably one thing that does not work in the South, which is very, very big in the North, but it's just not working as great in the South here.
Thanks for sharing those. Let's switch to some of the work that you guys are doing with the national organizations. So I know both of the groups that you're involved with have some goals to influence impact sustainability at the farm level. So Robert, for the soybean industry, there's some goals that they aim to achieve by 2030. What are those goals, and are we on track to achieve them?
I'm going to say yes, and some of them are exceeding our expectations already, but our industry has a goal of reduced land use by 10%. And we're trying to produce a bigger, better bean on a smaller number of acres. So we don't lose production, but we're just doing it on a smaller amount of acres. So land use should be reducing. I guess the next one is soil erosion, which I, as a farmer, the last thing I want to see is my soil trickling off into a stream or blowing off into the wind. And we have a goal of reducing soil erosion by 25%. And I think we're on that target with things like the cover crops and alternating field crops and leaving some of the residue with the no-till. That appears to be paying big dividends there. We have energy use. We'd like to reduce another 10%, which is everything from shorter seasons to less tillage to less fertilizers, pest and weed management practices that are reduced. The fewer the number of passes you make over a crop, usually the cheaper it is for that input. So we're reducing in that regard. And then our final one is reducing our greenhouse gas emissions by 5%. Which again kind of encompasses a lot of the same practices that we're doing on the soil and the land practices. Just how can we do more with less? So I think we're on a good track to get there. I also want to state, and I don't have the numbers with me, but when we're trying to differentiate U.S. soy from other countries, the sustainability is we're the only one that can provide that. And deforestation appears to be a big issue to foreign countries. Our U.S. forestry acres are actually on the increase, whereas you know what other countries are doing in other parts of the world to the forest. And so it's a big plus for us to be able to tout that we're reducing our acreage and increasing our forestry acres.
And I bet if you want those specific numbers, Paul, who's here from the United Soybean Board, could get those for you later, so you can find him. All right, Charlie, I know the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef has some goals as well. Can you share with us what those are and the progress the industry is making toward them?
Yes. Yeah, the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef published their goals 2 years ago. And one of those being is on the greenhouse gas sector for the cow-calf portion is to get 385 million acres under a grazing management plan by 2050 and to become climate neutral by 2040. And we're working with our corporate partner, people on the retail and food service side, the packer processor on their scope 1 and 2 emissions, trying to make the animal more efficient through the feeding process with genetics. Right now we're producing the same amount of beef right now with our reduced numbers in our cattle inventory because of increased carcass weights and increased in feeding efficiency. So that's one thing that the roundtable is looking at. How do we increase the efficiency? You know, on the cow-calf sector, we're doing it with bull selection, getting a lot better EPD bulls in with our cows where they're more productive. Another thing is when we look at the sector as a whole is animal health and well-being. We're trying to get beef quality assurance uptick 10% increase every year with producers and their employees. So that to us, to the consumer, that's their biggest concern is animal health and well-being. So that is a big front for the roundtable. We're addressing the consumer's concerns.
That kind of goes into my next question, which you answered a little bit, but what do you hear from consumers about sustainability, and how are those conversations informing what you do on the farm? Are there things beyond animal health and welfare?
Well, the Beef Checkoff does some surveys, and animal health and well-being is one of the big ones. That's the consumer's top priority. The other thing to me that I hear locally is water quality. We have a lot of rivers and streams where I live. Current River's not very far from us, the Jack Forks, and we got some other small tributaries to that. Clean water is very important, and quantity of water. I believe one day the water is going to be the new gold. We've just got legislation passed in Missouri to stop the import of water this year. That sets high among folks in our area. You know, clean, clear water running off my operation is very important to me.
Important to the community, yep. And Robert, same question for you.
Sustainability is the buzzword, as I mentioned earlier, all around the world. I'm trying to think how to say something different, because all of my things seem to revolve back around it's what we do naturally. So on the United Soybean Board, and we're administering and directing the checkoff dollars and where they go, we try to meet some criteria. First of all, is it a necessity? Is it what we need? Is it what the farmer needs? We try to look at the timeliness. If we're going to pay for research, how long does it take to get the results back to the farmer? What is the return on investment of that? But as I mentioned also earlier, we try to look at the sustainability aspect of that. How is that going to help us in our goals that we just talked about a moment ago? And we're doing that on every level, be it something that I'm involved in, and that is the research side. Funding, reading 80 to 100 some odd research proposals is not the funnest thing in the world, but getting that funded to do what we need it to do to grow the crop. And then we have the marketing aspect, and then innovative ideas. I'm wearing Skechers shoes. Who knew that the rubber soles are made with soybean oil now? If you drove in today, maybe you had a diesel vehicle. That soy diesel could be biodiesel. The tires that are on your vehicles now, Goodyear has been using soybeans for several years, and they have a lofty goal of reducing 100% of the crude oil out of their tires and using nothing but bio oils and different seed oils that come from soybean a lot. It could be a sustainable aviation fuel if you happen to fly in. Maybe 10% of your fuel in the airplane that you flew in on today may have been sustainable fuel coming from soy. What else? Firefighting foam used to be known as a forever chemical. Now we're using the soybean aspect of and making it a natural, safe, environmental friendly product, because most of the time when they fought a fire, it ran off into the creek, or I mean not the creek, but into the gutter system, but it was still this toxic chemical. It never broke down. And now this is a natural thing. It breaks down into a natural product in the soil, and there's no harm to it. And the firefighters can go home at the end of the day with a clean uniform. They're not covered in all these chemicals. So we're really looking at those innovative ideas to try to push the sustainability on our farm and practice kind of what we preach. Use those products, use that research.
Thank you.
Yep.
Switching gears a little bit, when it comes to carbon markets, and Robert, this is for you as well, how do you feel about the role of soy in helping companies reduce their carbon footprint?
Well, I just said this. We circle right back around. It's what we're doing. When we can provide a company with an alternative to use soybean oil rather than a cup of crude oil, that once we pump it out of the crude oil out of the ground, you can never put it back. But if you grow and use soybean oil, and you can use a cup of oil to make soles on your shoes, we'll just grow another crop next year. So again, it's answering that sustainability officer's questions as to how can they provide an answer to their customers that they're making their product sustainable.
Benefit for the company and the consumer and the environment, yep.
Yeah.
And Charlie, for you, beef often gets a negative reputation in mainstream media for its greenhouse gas emissions. So how are national organizations working to change this narrative? And what is the role of grasslands and pasture management and some of the work that you're doing in this conversation?
Well, you are correct. We do take it in the butt right there pretty often. But if you look, our cattle they produce methane. It's a given fact. But how much carbon are we sequestering by proper land management? That's an unknown. Nobody's able to actually physically measure it. So how can we manage it if we cannot measure it? And, I'm involved with a program right now that Nestle Purina has going, and it's over measuring methane. And they bring people down to my operation about bi-monthly. And I think it's just telling our story, what we're doing on our operations. We want this, we want to protect this land for generations down the road. We're not there to destroy nothing. We want to help it. And we're doing that through carbon sequestration, how we're feeding our hay. We're growing the organic matter in the soil. We're putting carbon back into the soil by doing that. We got the hoof action of the cows out on the field, just as everybody wants to refer to as the buffalo did. We're still got those same practices. We just need to tell our story a lot better.
And Robert, you mentioned earlier about soybeans on the global market and conversation around deforestation. But the U.S. soy has the largest global sustainability verification scheme known as SSAP. So for those in the audience that aren't familiar with that program, can you tell us some more about it and what the benefits are directly to soybean farmers?
Sustainable Soy Assurance Protocol. That's a mouthful for me, but anyway. So it's a tool that we use to, I'm going to say this word again, differentiate U.S. soy from soy around the world. We're the only country that can document, and that's what this is. It's a document. It's pretty simple-minded, I think, but if you're taking the word of the farmer that what he's doing is sustainable. You've got audits and checks and balances from USDA to make sure that the farmers are in compliance with sustainable practices, because so many of the acres are involved in some type of government program, and it's a government assurance to the consumer that the farmers are doing the right thing. And then I can't name, because I don't really know the name of the company, but I do know there are outside audits that are looking at agriculture to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And these are all just simple documents that we can carry and hand to a purchaser, that purchaser that can then use that in their labeling and their advertising of sustainable, because their consumers are wanting the same thing as our consumers here at home are. They want the sustainability. They can use it as a label on their products to promote. And there are just different levels of labeling on the feed. If you feed a chicken and you want to declare that as sustainable feed, 60% of the feed has to be from sustainable soy. And all of these things really carry a lot of weight around the world, especially the large purchasers that need to really answer the questions from their purchasers about sustainability.
And how many countries and how many products are we talking about?
I see there's over 20 different countries, and I think there's well over 120 or so companies that are using the sustainability assurance protocol in their marketing and their advertising and their labels. So it's pretty big.
And I do want to make sure we have some time for audience questions, because I know in a room full of this many journalists, there should be quite a few. So at this time, we'll open it up. I think we're going to have VJ running around with a mic in the back. So if you have a question, you raise your hand or stand up. Got one right over here.
So you said a lot of your sustainability is based through the USDA on the soybean. How are the cuts to the USDA and to programs and personnel affecting that sustainability program?
It's really hard for me to hear. What was that?
How are the cuts to USDA and the programs affecting anything with the U.S. soy?
Well, USDA is pushing sustainability, and if there is an incentive to that, we want to hear about it, because again, it has to be something that we can incorporate into our operation in a feasible manner. We would love to do all of those, but sometimes they just do not work. Again, as I mentioned with the cover crop behind the rice, it's just not a feasible type of sustainability. So.
And Charlie, I don't know if you want to answer this here or not, but do you want to talk about any concerns you have about cuts at the USDA from a local perspective?
Yeah, from a beef producer and a grazer aspect, the cuts have come more as technical assistance providers. They're wanting to get these programs out on the ground. We get the producer cost share dollars to him. He implements the program, but doesn't have the knowledge to follow through with it because the TA providers have been reduced drastically, and they're cutting the NRCS folk staff tremendously also. So in some areas, they're outsourcing this to NGOs, but we've got to provide these operators with technical assistance.
Including cutting some biologists too, it sounded like.
Yeah, we've lost some wildlife biologists in Missouri, which we have a problem with the black-headed buzzards. We lost the biologist in southeast Missouri, then Wisconsin and Minnesota lost their wolf biologists completely. In that area, they took the early retirement package.
Any other questions? Got one right over here.
Sorry for making you walk so far, man. Morning, Moses, Mike, Cal Poly. I'm really interested in the soybean being used for non-food consumer products. What are some barriers that prevents soybean from being increased in that area? Because I feel like a lot of consumers would tie themselves to products like that. Does that question make sense?
Yes. I guess the barrier comes from we're competing against other farmers, other commodities that have a very beneficial oil or protein or enzyme level as well. And it's just a matter of trying to put soy in the foremost thought of the people that are purchasing that, because we don't want to contradict another farmer to benefit soy, but we want to move forward with everybody, and it's not really benefiting anyone to reduce the crude oil if we're just doing the soy. We can't produce enough as it is now. If we were to meet all of the demands that we have out there, if 100% of the airlines went to sustainable aviation fuel, and all diesel is sustainable biofuels, and we could not produce enough. So we really want to work with others and go at this as a agricultural commodity, not just a soybean. I really don't have much else I could add to that other than we don't want to cut another farmer just to benefit one side or the other. Does that help?
Any other questions from the audience? I will say both Charlie, got one up here.
Chris Clayton, I'm with DT and the Progressive Farmer, and I hate to be the guy who throws a bomb into everything, but I don't ever hear anybody talk about the role of farm subsidies when it comes to sustainability. We just increased PLC payments, we just increased ARC payments, we just increased We're going to pay for cattle predation losses. We're going to pay for cattle natural disaster losses. We're going to pay for unborn cattle livestock losses now. How does sustainability play in the idea when we continue to increase government payments to farmers to maintain their operations? How do we move to the point where we are not so reliant on government programs to be sustainable?
You probably can answer to this, that you're sitting right here. It is very difficult right here to hear. So
I'll try to summarize Chris's question the best I can.
for some reason, it appears to be going that way, not this way.
And Chris, I think you love to throw a bomb out, so I don't know what you're saying. But his question is, what is the role of government payments and increased government payments in conservation efforts? And let me know if I'm summarizing this all right, but is it the role of the government to subsidize those and to subsidize farmers to be able to continue farming profitably? Is that roughly fair, Chris?
I think I heard the word depredation in his. So like for us to get a cow or a calf, any funding out of that, we have to get a necropsy done, which normally will cost you about $250. But if you got to call a vet out on the weekend, it could cost you $500. And the amount that we get back from like losing a calf to a buzzard take, by the time we get through with all the paperwork and paying for the necropsy, it's not efficient for us to even mess with it. And as far as we do get drought assistance when we hit a D3, but if you look at the payment that comes back for that, because if most of the area is in a drought, hay is going to be very, very costly. It's not a winning game on the beef industry side at all. It does not profit us at all.
I guess if I was to say anything about that, a farmer would really love to do this without any type of assistance and do the right thing. Sustainability and healthy, nutritional, abundant food supply is what we need to provide for our country, and it's what the consumers are wanting. But when it comes to paying for that, we seem to be getting cut all the time, and our payments for those things that they're asking us to do keep getting cut or removed. Everybody wants it, but nobody wants to pay for it. If that is anything, I don't know.
I think we've got time for one last question, if there is one. Pause for a minute. There. And I will say, both Charlie and Robert will be around after the session too, so if you'd prefer to grab them for a one-on-one interview, I think they'd both be willing to do that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm full of questions, just had coffee. Listen, all this talk about sustainability, and I'm not sure if you touched deeply onto this, it's kind of in tandem with the previous question. How has law policy changed to accommodate what the farmer is doing in terms of sustainability?
Well, that may be a question for ASA, the American Soybean Association. On the USB side, we try not to answer those kind of questions just because we're restricted to research and promotion, and there is a whole nother arm that handles policy. So, sorry about that. Do you have anything you want to say?
I could not hear you.
What role has policy and policy changes played in impacting sustainability?
I'm kind of with Robert there. When you look at our policy side of like Missouri Cattlemen's and then CVA side, we got to have science data behind every program or practice that we put in place. So, we're not going to come out with a policy that doesn't have science-backed data to help support that program.
All right, and I'll let you guys have the last word. Any final thoughts you want to share on sustainability or what you do on your farm?
Well, really not on that, I don't guess, but we're farmers. I don't have a degree in journalism or even English, according to my wife. I keep saying this, it's what we do, it's what we want to do, it's where we live. Our homes are all out there in the middle of those fields. I don't want to do something that's going to harm those. And my dogs run and play and hunt in those fields. And, if something would happen to one of them dogs out there, I better not come home, is all I got to say. But we need you. We need your input. We need you telling the story, and we really encourage to come and get some stories from our organizations and from some farmers, and really tell the story. I think that's what we're all doing here today, and I'm hoping that this is not just what we're saying, but creates a dialogue that you can think of something different that maybe helps somebody create a whole new story about agriculture or what we're facing or where we need to go. That's all I got to add.
Well, I'd like to thank for being a part of this. I think this is really good. Robert and I get to sit up here and talk about our operations and sustainability. And one thing that we haven't really touched base on is sustainability is keeping this next generation of folks on the farm. I think that's where you all could play a big role in the picture that you paint of operations, to highlight that in front of our youth. Try to get them engaged more. I think that's one thing that we're going to miss the boat on pretty easy, is keeping this next generation on the operations. And I think you all could be an important player in that.
We've got a lot of students and young people here too, to your point earlier, that are here to help us with that as well. So I know you guys are both very busy day to day on your farms and with all the work that you do with the association. So thank you very much for making the time to be here with us this morning. Let's give them a round of applause.